This episode was recorded prior to the police's brutal murder of George Floyd and the righteous rebellion against state violence that is flourishing and continuing to grow. The episode is late because I've been extremely busy for related reasons, but also because it felt inappropriate to post an episode about a TV show in the midst of all of this. But this episode was also recorded after the police's brutal murder of Eric Gardner and Tatiana Jefferson and Lillian Polanco and Sandra Bland. Every episode I've recorded has been preceded by the state lynching of Black people. And in fact, there were only 27 days in the year 2019 in which the police didn't kill anyone. But every episode was also recorded during a time where Black organizers have been building resistance to racism and policing. There are so many things you can do to help. Even if you can't attend a protest in person, there are meaningful things you can do online and over the phone to support Black Lives Matter. I'm happy to connect folks with organizations that can use a hand or meaningful online tactics you can take. And if you do have money, consider supporting the Black Visions Collective in Minnesota. They did so much of the visionary work for restorative justice in the Twin Cities. When you heard about how Minneapolis is dissolving their police department, it's because of groups like Black Visions Collective that made that possible. And they've been fighting this fight for a long time. I know a lot of national groups with names whose names you know are raising a lot of money right now. But Black-led community organizations where you live are not getting the same kind of donations. So I consider donating to Black-led community-based organizations who really will notice your dollars and cents. This week's episode is about the She-Ra series finale, and I want to recommend folks read an article by Tahir Duckett. It's called Do We Need the Police? Steven Universe and She-Ra Suggest We Don't. I'll link to it in the show notes. The article ran on Collider. You should definitely read it. Even if you haven't seen either of these animated shows, it will give you a great window into why we are saying that defunding the police and ending the policing is a real thing that we can actually do in real life. So get on that article and read it. And with that, let's get started. Hello, welcome to Graphic Policy Radio. This is your host, Ilana Levin, and welcome back to Etheria for one last trip into the world of She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. That's right, we're covering the show finale of She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, the Netflix show that I think basically every queer person I know is watching, and a lot of people who aren't also. And I'm really excited to be able to dive into this show. We've covered it already twice, the early seasons, and we also covered seasons 2 and 3. And this will be an entirely spoiler-filled episode. So if you haven't finished the most recent and final season, you're going to want to go and do that. And if you'd like to listen to my past episodes, I highly suggest it. And get ready for some spoilers because I've got some amazing guests to talk about the show with me. Joining me for the first time is Lux Alptraum.
Hi.
Hi. Lux is a Peabody-nominated producer and writer whose work has appeared in the New York Times, Cosmopolitan, and Hustler. Her first book, Faking It, The Lies Women Tell About Sex and the Truth They Reveal, explores our cultural obsession with feminine deceit. Welcome to the show for the first time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I feel like we began talking about a shared interest in geek culture at a mutual friend's Christmas party, and it took like 2 years for us to both be watching the same show at the same time in order for that to happen.
I mean, there's a lot of geeky stuff out there, so.
That's true. Like, there really is.
Now more than ever, really.
Yeah. Like, there's the fact that I'm not watching Harley Quinn right now, even though it's an animated show about women with superpowers who are kissing each other. Like, the fact that I'm not watching that right now shows you how much media there is that I could be, that like has stuff that I want to see in it. But She-Ra was absolutely a can't miss for me. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a fantastic show.
And joining me for the third time to talk about She-Ra is May Rude. May Rude is a Los Angeles-based trans Latina lesbian. She's a journalist who's worked for Autostraddle, Them.us, and Out Magazine, as well as a sensitivity reader and trans consultant on novels, comics, TV shows, and video games. She's consulted on titles like Lumberjanes by Noelle Stevenson, who you may recall as being the showrunner of this show, Bitch Planet, and Cosmo Nights, and is obsessed with queer representation in media. Welcome back to the show, May.
Hi, thanks for having me back. I'm so excited. I'm always excited to talk about Shira, and I love talking about it with you.
Thank you. And I'm in good company because you've also spoken about it recently on NPR. So
yeah. Yeah, that was a great time.
I've been really excited at how much mainstream media coverage the finale has gotten. Like there was a piece in CNN.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, CNN and like geeky websites like IO9 is having constant coverage of it.
Yeah. I mean, IO9 I expect to. I'm just always impressed to see shows like this get coverage somewhere like CNN. That's awesome.
And it really is newsworthy. I mean, we're only a couple of years into the time period in which we've seen female characters kiss each other in all ages oriented animated shows. Like this is just a couple years into this thing being a thing. And I'm excited to see the media treating this as a major media event, like from the standpoint of the show being a social phenomenon that lots of people are going to watch and have feelings and talk about.
Yeah, and like last year, Catradora was the #2 most popular ship on Tumblr. Like, it's a cultural phenomenon. It's not just relegated to small, like, queer spaces or queer women fandom. It's a huge thing.
And now it's like canonically ensconced in the annals of pop culture things that happened. Yeah.
It's the sort of an interesting center of the show, honestly.
Yeah, and that's been interesting to hear people talk about. I don't know if folks have watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I think it's sort of an interesting moment that Avatar: The Last Airbender is back on TV. I'm sorry, it's on Netflix, so everybody's sort of watching it again, and it's a gorgeous, stunning show with all kinds of really beautiful political work in it, in addition to all the beautiful world building, but without any sort of like central queer characters or relationships. And it's sort of an interesting contrast to see how central in the end of the day, the romantic relationship was between Catra and Adora in this, and how much that's a big part of the discourse versus the fact that we like, I don't know. I just think that like, that's the last thing that we talk about when we talk about Avatar. At least as someone I'm not super involved in the fandom, but I did listen to a number of podcasts around it. And it just feels like this show has a real emphasis that's been on relationships of all different kinds, like be they pseudo-familial, romantic, in some cases like about government structure even, but that this is really a relationship-driven show.
Yeah, absolutely.
in a really serious way.
Yeah, and love is a central theme, and they like all throughout the whole show, it's all about how the love that these people have for each other is what helps them defeat the Horde and helps them defeat Horde Prime.
Well, and not even just that, but that helps them become better people.
Yes.
I mean, I really love that it's a show where, with rare exception, most of the villains are they're able to overcome their villainy. You know, most of the villains are redeemed in some way. You know, we have Shadow Weaver. I think Shadow Weaver's kind of the first case of that, crossing over and betraying Hordak, but ultimately kind of dealing with her trauma, dealing with her pain, and trying to become a good person. Obviously, I mean, one of the reasons this season made Catra so compelling for me was because, you know, Catra's been I think a little bit more simplistic in earlier seasons and more of just an antagonist. And obviously there was definitely like the trauma of abandonment as an undercurrent, but, you know, she was really leaning into just being a heel and being an antagonist and being power hungry. And I think in this season, we really see her fleshed out into being someone with severe abandonment issues, someone who has turned to cruelty because of her own feelings of inadequacy and her own just lack of sense of self-worth. And I just really loved that this season was like, oh, you see this person who's being horrible, who's been horrible to you for so many years, and you greet them with love. And greeting them with love is how you repair things. You don't you don't fix things by quote unquote getting back at them. You fix things by embracing them. And I just love seeing shows with that kind of message.
I don't remember which season it was, but the one where it's called Corridors, where you have the flashback to their childhood together,
Yeah.
and you see that it's not like it's just Catra has, is short-tempered and sensitive, but Adora has had issues of not kind of undermining her and leaving her behind in the past. It isn't just, and that the way the abuse in the Horde has been structured has fallen largely to hurt Catra in an unfair way. That gives you that context of their dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's in the first season. I mean, it's definitely like been a really thoughtful show and been really thoughtful about Catra since the beginning. But I think this season she really came into her own.
Mm-hmm. Also, I think it did a great job of showing that Adora also needed to grow and learn to love herself. And she needed to learn that sacrificing herself isn't the only way she can be useful. When Mara visits her in the heart of Etheria, and she's like, "No, I sacrificed myself so that you wouldn't have to do this. You're worth more than what you can give to other people." And it's just really powerful that this show, like all the main characters, need to learn to love themselves and love other people and trust each other. And I just love it.
Yeah.
One of the cool things with, I think, this season was really Perfuma's storyline, which is like a small thing, but like you see her saying that she actually doesn't have to stop being so emotional and caring about people so much in order to fully express her powers, and that she's like comfortable, like with like leading, but with kindness. And if other people see that as a weakness, like she has a commitment that this is how she wants to live her life.
Yeah, and I love that that it was emphasized that everyone is different and that you don't have to heal the same way. You don't have to express your feelings the same way. There are multiple healthy ways to do that. And there are multiple healthy ways to be yourself. And we got to see a bunch of them in this show.
Yeah, I think one of the things it's not unique to She-Ra, thankfully, but it's kind of like a new development in the media landscape, since depictions of women have historically not been great. But I think it's kind of wonderful to see, especially in like superhero shows, instead of just having like the girl or two girls, you have a range of ways to be a woman and a range of different kinds of expressions of femininity, a range of different like female experiences. And you don't have to put like the burden of like women get to be emotional onto just like your sole female character.
Yeah.
You get to have one female character who's like, look, I'm going to be this kind of more traditionally feminine emotional character, but there's all of these, and that's okay. And there's all of these other women who are showing different ways to be women. I mean, yeah, it's just a really fantastic show on so many levels. And I'm so excited that young people get to grow up with something this thoughtful. It's just really awesome.
Yeah, that's incredible. Like the way that this show just talks about how like finding your identity and learning to like stop judging yourself and stop hating yourself for who you are. Like the lessons or but it's not like in a preachy way. It's not like lessony. Like the lesson this week is learn to love yourself. But just, I think it's going to be incredible for kids and young people to be able to grow up with this for years to come.
I mean, we talked a lot about how deeply we love Scorpia in past episodes. We've discussed it, but this season, it's really, I mean, having the moral support of her probable eventual girlfriend Perfuma to like feel like she can be on the stage and claim that space and express herself in ways that aren't just the role someone else has given her. But like, also, this is a show that's like, we're going to show you how she's going to like flex her back muscles at you. And that's going to be like a triumph moment. And
that was beautiful.
We understand that. Like, that's amazing. That's amazing.
That's all I've ever wanted.
From a show that began based on characters where all the female characters literally had exactly the same body because they were molded off the same toy mold for Mattel.
Yeah. And literally the main character's name is She-Ra. Like, she's supposed to be just like, oh, this is what a girl superhero is like.
Although I feel
know?
like She-Ra is a better name than He-Man.
Oh my god. Yes.
Like, I guess if you want to get gender essential, He-Man is like
The worst.
Yeah, they're both tough. Like, I like
Ram Man is probably the worst.
I can excuse She-Ra just because so funny. I was very, very into the original She-Ra when I was a toddler. And my younger cousin, who's 3 years younger than me, was named Shira. Shira.
Yeah.
And so
Because
as a
we're Jews.
3-year-old,
Yeah.
I was very excited that I had a younger cousin, She-Ra, Princess of Power.
Excellent.
So She-Ra as a name like always works a little better to me because I'm like, well, She-Ra's a name, but like He-Man is not a name.
Yeah, I liked in this show they kind of like leaned into pronouncing more like She-Ra.
Yeah.
As opposed to She-Ra. You know?
But there'll also be like she sun god, right? Like Ra, the god of the sun.
Oh.
I
don't
had
know.
not
There's some
made
interesting
that connection.
I mean, look, when they save the world, they basically turn it into a big Yggdrasil, like this giant world's tree. My husband, raised Catholic, pointed out when in the very finale and you see Shira, he's like, she has a wound in her side like Christ. I was like, yes.
There's
yes,
a lot of Christian stuff in here. Horde Prime's spaceship, like Noelle said that Horde Prime's spaceship was based on mega churches.
Oh my God.
I grew up in a conservative Christian church that did conversion therapy.
Ooh.
Like, literally, I've been thinking nonstop about in Save the Cat when Catra undergoes conversion therapy, and Horde Prime is like, oh, I saw her mind. It was all destroyed and stressed out, and she was in constant turmoil because of you, Adora. And I brought her into the light. I baptized her, and now she has a pure mind, and she's not thinking about any of that stuff. I love the way that this show, like, addressed that, which is such a big thing in so many people's lives. Like, the way that Horde Prime and, like, brainwashed Catra, like, sorry to jump right into, like, later spoilers.
No.
But the way that they were talking is, like, exactly how people talk, like, around conversion therapy and, like, praying away the gay, where it's like, Adora, you broke my heart, but Horde Prime fixed me, and you can be fixed too if you just join the light with us. I love it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I had not made that connection because that's not a reference point I personally have. But now that you're mentioning it, I mean, yeah, I think it's really powerful that, you have...
And he's, like, dressed like a priest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that... Yeah, it's really powerful that, the big bad in this season is about eradicating individuality, quite literally, and like in some cases through this baptismal proceeding, and turning people from these different individuals who have their complex, messy lives into extensions of this one person's vision.
Exactly.
Which, yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of parallels to what many queer people are put through.
Yeah, like, as a trans lesbian who grew up in a church like that, like, I had, like, shivers for so many scenes where it was just like, wow, this is, like, how my pastor would talk, or, like, this is what our baptismal font looked like. Like,
wow.
It's incredible. It was one of my favorite things about this season, and the whole show, I think, is a lot about, like, with all the predestination stuff, where Adora is like, oh, I have to sacrifice myself. That's the only way that I can, it's my destiny. I have to do it,
Wow.
Yeah, I love that it pushed back on that. Like, and because there's so many stories that tell us that a hero is someone who is selfless. And like, we do see acts of selflessness within this series. Like, Glimmer's mom obviously gives herself, sacrifices herself, and Shadow Weaver sacrifices herself. But I think telling Adora that, you can't pour from an empty cup, that continually to give and give and give is not strength. And to jump a little bit into a different series, I feel like Steven Universe in its final season also made an argument about that.
Yeah.
About just saying, you know, Steven and Adora, I think, are both characters who feel like the way that they contribute is by taking care of everybody else and pushing themselves past their limits. And I think having both of these shows push back on that and say, like, no, if you destroy yourself, that's bad for everybody. Like, you can't, your worth is more than just what you're willing to sacrifice for other people.
In a way, Shadow Weaver, like, sacrificing herself is also a way for her to get out of her accountability. Like, I've been very obsessed with how this season handles Shadow Weaver's relationship with Catra and Adora, because you have this example of these are two people, you know, they were raised with this abusive pseudo parent figure. They have a bit of distance from her now, so they're aware of of her game, and yet they can't keep it from still, like, working on them a bit. Like, on an intellectual level, they're like, I know this is the kind of mind games that you play. I know this is how you manipulate people. But on an emotional level, they can't quite turn it off. And you still see, you know, Shadow Weaver doing that, trying to make She-Ra sacrifice herself and trying to imply that her love with Catra is a weakness. And that this is just, she can't help herself by continuing to say that. And there's an amazing quote from Noelle Stevenson, I think it was in CBR, where she said, she described Shadow Weaver's death thusly, and this is a quote: "It is still kind of selfish. It is still kind of a selfish end. It was something that Catra was also confronted with. Maybe I've done so much wrong that the only way to make up for it is to sacrifice myself and die, and then they'll have to forgive me because I died saving someone. Catra is forced to stick around and actually confront the mistakes she has made and actually fix them, becoming better and a more positive person through that. Shadow Weaver makes that choice to just sort of peace out. Even that little smug smile at the end, that now you have to forgive me, goodbye. It's so her. I love it." I was like, oh, fuck.
Although I do think it's interesting that both people who ultimately sacrifice themselves are mothers/mother figures and flawed mothers.
Oh.
I mean, I think there's something worth examining there. I don't think Angela sacrificing herself is quite the same as Shadow Weaver, but it is framed in this, like, I've always been a coward. I've always, I've tried to protect people by preventing them from doing anything. And now I'm going to do, like, this one act of bravery. I mean, it is obviously framed a little bit differently than Shadow Weaver, but it is fundamentally like, this major sacrifice is how I make up for my failings.
They're also adults. And like, that's one of the things I've been thinking a lot about this season as well, is like, you know, Shadow Weaver is a real adult. Angela obviously is a real adult. One of the things that I liked about this season being the one where, like, you actually hear Natasha and Spinnerella address each other as wives, is it sort of is like, yeah, they're adults. And it was sort of, at different times in the show, it's been a little bit hard to keep track of sort of how old everybody is. And that is something which is relevant to questions of people's maturity level, what level of authority they should be having in certain situations, etc. And so sort of being able, oh, that's right. Like, Natasha and Spinnerella were in the Warrior Council from the back in the beginning with their mom. Like, like, they're not princesses yet. They have powers. So I'm a little bit unclear on what's up with that. But this season, and you always know Frost as the kid, because she's like literally a kid. But sort of sorting out sort of like, you have Micah comes back, right? Like, what's the role of, young people have been running the show in absence of parents for a while now. And now you have Micah back. I don't know. It just, there's sort of there's something very complicated in the way you have their different generations interacting with each other. And the art style makes it a little bit hard to tell necessarily who's supposed to be how old.
Yeah. I'm not trying to think who I know are adults. I mean, Castaspella, Micah, Angela, I whether or not Horde and Hordak, and I guess they count as adults, like all the clones. It's a little hard to say.
I think Entrapta is definitely, like, a lot older than most of the other princesses.
Yeah. But it seems like, a lot of them, like, the impression that I got is that a lot of the princesses are young because they are the children of people who were killed in the first Princess Alliance. And so it really is a story in a lot of cases about people who are making up for their parents' shortcomings and trying to figure out what to do in the absence of their parents.
Mm-hmm. Also, literally, it's about former child soldiers. And, like, Adora and Catra were in this evil army since they were babies. Like, they were raised by Hordak and Shadow Weaver. Like, it's so... Like, and again, it's so good to show that they can grow and change, and that they're not trapped in this abusive cycle. Because, like, and for a while, like, they kind of are. For a lot of the show, they kind of are. Adora keeps on going off on her own and trying to sacrifice herself. Catra, obviously, is lashing out and hurting everyone that she can. And then finally, this season, at the end, especially at the end, we're able to see them break free of that cycle of abuse and become healthy people, despite, like, literally growing up as child soldiers.
Yeah. I think it's also fascinating that even Hordak kind of gets a bit of a redemption. Like, yeah, obviously Horde Prime doesn't, but, you know, I thought it was really sweet that at the end we have, like, Hordak being freed from Horde Prime and being embraced by Entrapta, and that this idea that the power of friendship can help even the villain.
Yeah. And, like, I saw Noelle say that she thinks he should still do, like, community service and stuff, which I really like. Because, like, he was an overlord. Like, he tried to take over. He killed a lot of people.
Yeah, again, there's a difference between, for example, Scorpia, who it's really clear that she was basically given to the Horde to, like, serve in the Horde, and didn't have a lot of understanding that she might have any other option, you know, in her life, versus, you know, Hordak, and I think that it's interesting that I really, really do enjoy what the show did with Hordak in general, but, like, you know, it's interesting how when they finally had, in the end of last season, had Horde Prime and Hordak interacting, and, like, you could see all of Hordak's inferiority complex, like, why he acts that way, where it's coming from. I am a little bit obsessed with, I don't know if folks know from, like, the X-Men, the whole, like, with Wolverine, like, Weapon X, you're not Weapon X, you're Weapon 10. And my brain was like, he's not Hordak, he's Horde K, as in the 1,000th. He is the 1,000th Hordak. But I don't know if that's, I don't know that that's real. I don't know that that's real.
But I love that.
Yeah.
And, like,
okay, cool.
Even if it's not, like, real or whatever, like, it's still, I think, gives a lot of insight to the character.
You know, and I loved at the end, he's like, well, I created a name, I have an identity, I have my own relationships. Like, I can't just be, like, interplaced or interchanged with this other person. But you know, so much of his complexity as a character comes from, like, the fact that he was disabled, and that he, like, was constantly feeling like he had to hide that and sublimate it in some way, or else he would be exposed as being weak. Like, there was just always a lot of interesting stuff going on there. But yeah, that's one guy who needs to do a lot of community service, because it's not the same as Scorpia. Like, you know, yeah. Although, let's talk briefly about Wrong Hordak. When they first started referring to Wrong Hordak as Wrong Hordak, I needed to, like, make sure that I heard it right, because that is so totally something that I would have called it and felt very guilty calling it. And so I'm kind of amazed that the show got away with calling him Wrong Hordak, as in, like, Hordak with whom something is wrong. Like, I don't know, that's hilarious. And then the fact that they didn't come up with we'll call you da 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 instead. Like, no, he's just called Wrong Hordak throughout. Yeah. To me, is, like, very dark and very funny.
Yeah, like, I think this whole season, like, did a really good job of balancing super dark stuff with, like, the more, like, the show is, like, it's for kids, kind of, you know, it's, like, all ages. It's got a lot of humor in it. It's got young characters, like we've been saying, but this season had so much super dark stuff.
Yeah.
Like, like Catra, like, breaking her arm and twisting it around when she's, like, mind controlled. Natasha and
genocide.
Spinnerella.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I was happy for that subplot because it gave us to have like here's like a queer female couple and like we actually are going to spend some time looking at their relationship with each other and how meaningful it is.
Yeah, like their whole thing was about their relationship. It was like, oh, I forgot our anniversary. Oh, I need to get my wife back because she's my wife and I love her.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't just like one mention of them being wives.
And also shout out for the fact that Natasha is obviously Etheria's Batman, since she has a plan for everybody's weakness and is like confused that everybody else doesn't also have a plan for everybody's weakness already.
Yeah.
That was incredible. And spraying Catra just with the little spray bottle.
Amazing.
Perfect.
It was, I mean, talk about a great minor character. But speaking of dark things, yeah, I mean, you have the whole fact that you have like, okay, I've been genociding other planets. And the conversation in Horde Prime's ship with Glimmer, and where he's saying this is a delicacy of a world that I killed. Like that is such an amazing arch villain moment.
Yeah.
And really shows you the stakes at play.
Yeah, and it does a great job because we've been on Etheria for basically the whole show, and then now all of a sudden we're in outer space, and it's like, oh, here are the stakes. He's wiped out countless planets. He has trophy rooms.
Yeah. No, I mean, I also love that we get to meet some of his other victims. And I think that's a really fantastic episode where we're confronted with the fact that many, many, many other worlds have fallen to this guy, and that, you know, it's not that I mean, it really drives home just like how essential it is that Etheria doesn't give up, but also how impossible it is that Etheria doesn't give up. Although, you know, I do like that when we find Milog, it's like, we have like the secret. It's his kryptonite is magic. Yeah,
and like, of course it is,
right?
You know? Like,
no.
And yet it didn't feel ham-handed because it was just sort of like this is a natural extension of the world, I suppose.
Well, and especially because I think the way that magic is constructed in this universe is that it's very much about love, and it's very much about all of a friendship and believing in yourself and all of these things that are directly opposed to what Hordak is about. I mean, it's also Etheria's magic is very much about individuality. And that's obviously directly counter to what Hordak wants to see in the universe, or what Horde
I also
Prime,
think there's
rather.
a strong environmental sort of metaphor, like when the magic sort of looks like pollen. I was actually half expecting the Hordaks to start sneezing, but like, you know, when She-Ra restores the planet, like you see this return of nature coming back, and these plants. You have nature, the whispering wood has sort of been protecting the remaining magic on the planet. And the way people keep talking about draining the magic, it's like, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of like natural resources, sort of a metaphor to how they talk about magic being harvested.
Yeah, well, and I think that there's a lot of themes of colonialism, like Horde Prime's whole thing is he has an empire and he is spreading it and taking over people's lands and erasing their individuality so that everyone is like him. Like, that's what colonialism is.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's funny to me that two of my favorite, like, quote unquote kids shows are both queer women rallying against colonialism.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great
What's
to
your
see.
other favorite?
Oh, I was going to say Steven Universe. It's another anti-colonialist allegory.
Totally. Not surprised to hear that. I just was like, curious.
Yeah.
The season was also, the show's always been very genre aware. I mean, like, you know, it had a whodunit episode and it had a D&D episode. I appreciated this season's noir episode. Like, and
so good.
It feels like an AU within the show. It's sort of like, what if these characters you know and love wore what they would be wearing if this was a film noir? And like, let's give an excuse for that. And let's have a song number that's like straight, like, you know, straight up a Torch song opportunity. And that was a cool episode also because it was the first time I had any understanding of like why you have Seahawk, possibly the most irritating character, with Mermista, the character who's most likely to be irritated by something. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm beginning to understand this relationship now. I really got a kick out of that episode. The designs of the set there were great. And just like, made me so happy to see like Perfuma and Scorpia dancing together. I guess I'm a shipper or something. So
and Scorpia's song was incredible.
So adorable. I'm a spy.
It was so good. And it was so Scorpia. Like, of course, Scorpia would just sing their plan out loud.
Yeah. And it was nice to have Double Trouble back.
Yeah. I mean, and also Prince Peekaboo looked great.
Yeah. It was a great design.
Yeah.
I will say I do wish Double Trouble hadn't been the only non-binary character, because I think they're great, but I saw some, and I can understand why people struggle with this. I saw some people saying like how frustrating it was to have the one non-binary character be a double agent and be not trustworthy and be I mean, I think I'm not going to criticize the show for that. I think that's more about just that there's only one.
Yes.
And that it's so new just to TV. Like, I think the fact that they had a non-binary character, and I think Double Trouble being non-binary makes sense. But I just wish like we were at a point where people didn't have to be like, oh, the only time we see non-binary people, they're villains. Like, I wish representation had gotten to the point where that didn't even have to be a thing. Because I think Double Trouble's great. And I love that Jacob Tobia voiced the character. I think it's so good. Like, it didn't even occur to me until I saw someone else mention it, and then I was like, I wish we were at a point where we didn't have to think about that, because we just had enough diverse non-binary representation.
Yeah, definitely. And like, I mean, and also again another example of like somebody's a non-binary and it's related to their powers rather than like just because. But like this show definitely just has so much gender variation and diversity. Like in general, it's like the fact that I feel like fans of generally are like, yeah, Bo is trans, and it's sad that they can't just like say Bo is trans, but like Bo is trans. I mean, not to just tell you everybody you must agree with me on this, but I think that people generally do at this point.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people also see Perfuma as a trans woman.
Ah, cool. I'm all for it.
At least a lot of trans women fans I know do.
Oh, neat.
And then also I like Scorpia as a trans woman. And I like that as a trans for trans lesbian couple.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
No,
Totally.
I mean, I love that people can see themselves in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even when it's not explicit, there's just so much.
Yeah, there's like body diversity and like gender presentation diversity.
Yeah.
Like we have Catra wearing suits, and then short hair Catra looking so great.
Yeah. Part of why I have so much affection for Catra is visually she looks a lot like my sister. Not personality-wise, but just visually. And then when she got the pixie cut, it was like my sister in her early 20s, and I was just like, "Oh my god,
that's amazing!" I have a Jen Bartel print of Catra in her party suit, which I was just like,
"Oh, excellent!"
It's just such a great aesthetic moment. There's so much beautiful design with all the characters. That's the thing. If they were going to do like a film noir episode and they weren't going to nail costumes, then I wouldn't really be that excited. But like this is a show where they actually really put in the work on character design and costume design and set design of the settings and locations.
Looks so great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, but like, actually, I don't know if we talked about, because we barely saw him last season, but like Horde Prime's design, like the whole like 3 eyes on the side, like asymmetrical, the all-knowing eyes of Prime. I mean, this is amazing character design.
And then the way he has the like tendrils that soak up the like life force that all of his clones give. It's so good, and it's so creepy and weird. And every time he like jumps into a new body, that they did it so great.
Yeah, also just going back to what you were saying about it feeling like a mega church, I thought it was extra creepy how everyone was brother and sister and just
Yeah.
identity erased.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I
Yeah,
think they
this
were
season
able
was
to.
great.
Yeah.
They were able to keep it really creepy, like in those scenes. Impressively so.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, the voice actors did so great. Like, especially people like the person who voices Hordak and Horde Prime,
Yeah.
like, and Wrong Hordak.
To do all those characters.
Yeah, that's incredible. And AJ
Keston John
Michalka
is
did great as
Keston
Catra.
John is his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
Mm.
getting to do all those different voices and be clear. And we got to see Huntara briefly near the end. Of course, my girl,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
Gina Davis. Oh my God. Um,
Incredible.
But yeah, like all the voice acting perform. And you know who else does an amazing voice acting work on a character who their voice could have, Christine Woods is Entrapta. Like it would be so easy for Entrapta's voice to be grating, but it's not. Like it's a pleasure.
Yeah.
I love Entrapta. She's one of my favorites just because I love a weird, nerdy lady.
I mean, what did you think of her? Like, I have autism speech that they did this season.
I'm not autistic, but like, I mean, I think they did a good job. Like, I mean, obviously, they're like autistic characters have such a weird history in TV.
Yeah.
Like how TV portrays characters on the autism spectrum, like with like Big Bang Theory, and then like everything where it's like, oh, this like Hannibal, where they say like there's a fine line between autism and being a psychopath.
Oh, good God. They say that?
It's bizarre. And so I think they did a good job of, like, I mean, obviously, again, I'm not autistic. I don't want to speak for autistic people, but like, I love Entrapped as a character. I don't know anyone who doesn't love her. I think a lot of people relate to her, whether they're autistic or not. I think they did a great job of making her sympathetic and fun and funny.
Yeah,
and
likewise, I don't feel like I can speak to
a great character
representation for her, but I do think just throughout the show, she's been really fantastic as someone whose perception and understanding of the world is definitely different from that of everyone around her, and someone who is incredibly literal and incredibly focused on very specific things. And I think it does a good job of helping you understand why she does what she does. Like, it's really understandable to me when she goes over to the Horde. I don't think it's not something where you think like, why did she do that? Or like, oh, she's so terrible. You're like, oh, she was abandoned and she didn't know what to do. And she doesn't necessarily have the full understanding of what's going on that everyone else does because she has a little bit of tunnel vision.
And she doesn't have like the friendship relationships that like Bo and Glimmer have, who they're very close. Like she doesn't have that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Until like later with like Hordak, and then like in this season, she got like close with a lot of them, I think. But yeah, and I think that they do a good job of showing that it's not bad that she's different. And like she even says that, you know, she's like, no, like, she's like, I'm different and I interact with people differently, but that's not bad. That's who I am, and that's good. Like that's the whole message of the show, is that you might be different than what you want to be or what your parents want you to be or that whoever wants you to be, but you're good the way you are.
Yeah. Also, I just want to say I just loved Bo and Glimmer as a friendship, and possibly I wasn't sure if it was intended to be romantic when they said they loved each other at the end of this season. But I mean, I just celebrate them being whatever they are because I think they're really sweet, that relationship. And I just, Bo is one of my favorite characters, like partly because I love the voice actor. Marcus I forget if it's Scribner or Gribner, but whatever his last name is, like, I just think
Mhm.
he's really charming, and I
He's
like
so
him.
good.
Everything I've seen him in, I'm like, I like you. You're charming, and just Bo being like a slightly feminine dude who is also nerdy and also like really a badass archer. Like, I just
And loves crop tops.
yeah.
Even in
Yeah.
outer space.
He's really committed to his fashion.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. Yeah, I think like the Bo being the character who gets to do the speech to the people of Etheria to tell them to rise up and throw off their
Yeah.
chains. Like, I thought that was good. Like, because he's the guy who doesn't have superpowers. So it's not someone who's like immune to damage telling you to risk your life. It's someone like you.
Yeah.
You know, he's not a prince. He's just a guy.
Yeah, exactly. He's not.
He
And
also
he did
had
a great job.
He also had my favorite line of the season, which was when he said they're looking for his parents, and he's like, "They're dads. They can't defend themselves."
Yeah, that was so great.
And they like left him with like a dad joke. And I was like,
Oh, God.
it's the power of 2 dad jokes, twice as dadly.
It was incredible. Also, one thing that I do like about, I like everything that you said, but another thing that I like about Bo and Glimmer was that it was kind of like, it wasn't confirmed in the same way that Catradora was.
Yeah.
Like, the straight relationships, like, because obviously a lot of people ship Entrapta and Hordak. They didn't have, like, a defining, oh, we're a romantic couple moment either.
Yeah.
But then Spinnerella and Natasa did, and Catra and Adora did.
Yeah.
That is a great inversion. I mean, I feel like the flash forward fantasy that Adora has of the future, implies them as a couple, but the script doesn't say that that's necessarily what happens. And it can certainly be Adora projecting, like, I hope my friends get married to each other because I love them and then we'll all be together, is like an understandable human response to things, you know?
Yeah.
I
didn't realize. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to make a joke also in the way that, like, homophobes can be like, oh no, they're just good friends. You could say that about Bo and Glimmer. You could just be like, oh no, they, like, I know they look like they might be a couple, but they're just good friends. They're just good friends.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I wasn't even sure how to take that "I love you," where I was like, is it just a really intense friend I love you? Or, although I did not know that people were shipping Entrapta and Hordak, and that I find troubling.
I'm not a fan of it. It's a hugely popular ship on Tumblr.
No, I like that. I like Entrapta as somebody who isn't interested in. I see her as a romantic and, probably asexual. And
yeah.
I like that. And I like that her closest, most intimate relationship is with Emily. And
wait, talking about her being asexual, she is definitely robosexual in this season.
That's true.
Oh my God.
That is true.
She totally has like, hello there to like a robot.
And when she's like, oh, Darla and I are going to go have some alone time.
but I mean, as an aromantic robosexual, I think that's also beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly how, I agree with that exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, because it's so difficult to see, or it's so rare to see any kind of like aromantic female representation. And I think it's really, really great that she cares about computers. And she likes having friends, but she does not, of all the characters, she seems the one least interested in any kind of romantic attachment.
Mm-hmm.
I was glad that we got to see her cooking staff in the last episode coming back, making tiny food for the future. It's complicated. Like it's complicated with respect to like what people are looking for, in particular, like ships and what have you. It's stuff that I try to like keep myself out of, and yet it's impossible to like not have some feelings on it. Like I'm sitting here being like, yeah, I'm definitely believe the Scorpion and Perfume are gonna go date. It's gonna be great. It's like, well, that is shipping, okay? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I feel really negatively about an Entrapta Hordak ship because it feels a little forced, and B, Like, she seems so aromantic to me, and he has such a history. I don't want to see him with anybody because he is so historically so
Yeah.
violent. Like, it feels like, oh, these two people have talked to each other and have some emotional connection, therefore they must date. Like, it just feels a little forced to me, and
Also,
in
I
a way that
think
I'm uncomfortable with.
what they each need is a friend. Like, they don't need a romantic partner.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas, like,
friendship is what they are
Looking for
what they are
anyway,
looking
yeah.
for and what they need to become better people.
yeah. Whereas, like, yeah, Scorpia and Perfuma dating makes more sense to me and is very sweet. And it's also, yeah, I mean, actually, I think you bring up a really good point. I mean, Hordak and Entrapta are both so isolated. And the idea of, like, oh, their first relationship with anybody must be a romantic one. I mean, it's also, it's akin to why I got so creeped out by Stranger Things forcing Eleven and Mike together. Because I was just like, Eleven is, like, probably incredibly traumatized, has like had this like really disturbing childhood, and now you think that the first thing she wants is a boyfriend?
Yeah.
And like similarly, like Entrapta, like, oh, Entrapta's been incredibly isolated, doesn't know how to relate to people, and you think she immediately wants to start making out with this clone of a intergalactic despot.
Yeah.
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 And also, like, Hordak needs, like, it's not like I don't know how to relate this to like normal people, but like after you've just tried to take over a planet, I think it's good to take time off from romantic relationships and maybe just focus on like friendships as opposed to like he needs to learn to just be a friend before he can be someone's boyfriend.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's also, it speaks to how this show inverts one of the more common tropes you see in other shows where, you know, this quote unquote love conquers all. Like, this is a show that clearly believes that love conquers all, but it's not limiting that to romantic love. And it's certainly not saying that romantic love is superior to all of the other forms of love. Like, yeah, all of these characters are saved by love, but it looks very different for each one of them.
Right, like it's Bo who like talks Scorpia out of attacking, and they don't have any romantic subtext interest or anything at all. Like,
I love that. Like, because like we had seen like Adora talking to Catra, and then obviously Natasa and Spinnerella, and then even Seahawk with Mermista when Mermista's chipped. But then I love that it's Bo, and Bo's like, "Look, we're friends. I need you to trust me." I need you to remember friendship. And again, and similarly with Entrapta and Hordak, I like that as him being like, oh, I made a friend. Like, this was something that wasn't even possible for me when I was a part of, like, Hordak saying this. This wasn't, having a friend wasn't possible when I was a part of you, Horde Prime, but I made a friend. And that's what got me out of this.
And as part of him having an identity as a person was that he was able to have a relationship with someone who wasn't him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much interesting lore like that's built up around the show and questions. I mean, I have to wonder, like, what is Grayskull? I mean, I know what Grayskull is because I'm aware of Hera. I mean, He-Man.
Ooh, but like, I like calling it Hera.
Hera. I would be really here for Hera. I know what I feel like the show doesn't. It still leaves open stuff like, well, what is for the honor of Grayskull, and like, you know, now we're gonna get some damn He-Man show with a guy showrunner. Boo earns boring.
Yeah.
I think they should have given Noel Stevenson to run the He-Man show because, like, why not let a woman run something that isn't about women for once?
Yeah.
But anyway, you know, there's still sort of like, and the show leaves them characters saying, we're going to go bring magic back to the rest of the universe. So, you know, I feel good about this as a finale of a series. Absolutely. Like, I think it's satisfying, but there is still stuff that, you know, you can sort of think about and imagine and explore, like, of what else could happen in the future.
I kind of wish that the She-Ra would launch Masters of the Universe as like an inversion of the way He-Man originally launched She-Ra. Like
That
if
would be
some
incredible.
Yeah, I'm excited for Masters of the Universe just because my friend is voicing Orko. So
Oh,
Oh
excellent.
shit,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
yeah, my friend Griffin, he was Arthur in Amazon's The Tick, and he's
Oh,
gonna be
Oh,
I'm a
Orko.
huge fan of him.
Yeah,
Griffin
he's
Newman.
yeah, he's
Yeah, I
awesome.
love him. I love Blank Check podcast. He's
Yeah,
hilarious.
no, he's a great guy. So I'm excited for him to be in Masters of the Universe. I don't know if I'm gonna love it as much as She-Ra, but I'm like, gotta root for Griffin.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess you have to keep wondering, like, because that's the one line that's like completely about the two worlds together is for the honor of Grayskull. And I don't know if I were her, I'd want to know what that meant.
Yeah, they never touch on it. I hadn't thought about that. It's just sort of like the line that comes to her.
I
That
do
was
like though how open ended it is. Like with them saying like, "Oh, let's go bring magic to the universe." Like I think for the fandom, that's incredible because you can write them doing anything.
Yeah.
Like the possibilities are endless for like what you can imagine the future of Adora and Cat, the best friend squad. Like it's such a because it's also such like a cool and fun world to play in, like with the magic and now like. God, sorry, I'm just getting like overwhelmed. There's a lot. There's so much, like outer space and magic and friendship and like Catra's family. Like, where are more people who look like Catra? I want more cat people.
Yeah, I really
was
wondered
wondering
where she
about
came
that.
from. And
Yeah.
oh, what is his name? The lizard guy. It's like Ronaldo or something or
Rogelio?
Rogelio.
Rogelio, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
Kyle's boyfriend.
yeah.
Yep.
No, I mean, I'm torn because on the one hand, I like when shows end on a high note. I like when, like always leave them wanting more. I think it's a good philosophy, but I'm also like, but wait, I want more of this show.
Yeah.
5 seasons feels too short.
Yeah.
I had been wondering, like, there's so much diversity of species and character design and all the different beings on the planet, like, to what extent we might be sort of able to see where people come from and how. And, like, I also was just thinking a lot about, like, what, who are the first ones and, like,
Yeah.
how is it that there was a first one's baby who was on the other side of a portal to be pushed through in the first place?
No, absolutely. Like there's so much more to explore, and I agree with you, May, that it's great for the fans, it's great for fan fiction, it's great for all of that. But I'm also just like, but I want to know what Noelle thinks.
Yeah. Also, I mean, like, I want to see a lot more Cachadora kisses.
Yeah.
Just dozens and dozens,
I'm so glad they were able to just do that. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just glad, like, I mean, I think we're getting to a point where this is unremarkable, but I just, as somebody who grew up and came out in the 90s, it's just so nice to exist at a time when you can just have a bunch of casually queer characters and nobody has to explain their queerness. Nobody's queerness has to be a thing. Nobody even necessarily has to come out. It's just sort of like, it's there and it's great. And it's just so nice to see that in, not even just in entertainment, but in entertainment that is targeted at children. I'm just like, wow, that is very different from my childhood.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I do think, like you said, like, it's, like, there are lots of great examples that we've got now, like, obviously Steven Universe, and, like, Legend of Korra, they never got to, like, do anything in the show to, like, actually... but like still that pushed things forward a lot. The show Danger and Eggs.
Yeah, I know Shadi.
Shadi's great, and that show was so great at like pushing forward like casual queerness.
Yeah,
like that was incredible. And I think like all of these things, and She-Ra included, have kind of created this new world where like we have a new baseline for queer representation. Like it can't be just like Avengers Endgame where a guy
God.
in a support group is like, oh yeah, I went on a date with a man.
Or,
Or it can't be Onward, or is that what it's called? Beyond? Onward?
it's Onward, I think,
Onward, where the lesbian cop says it gets better.
So gross. And of course they like made it a cop just to make us angry.
Yeah. Although apparently I saw that Pixar has its first gay lead character in like a short that's on Disney Plus that's called Out. And like, on the one hand, I'm like, cool, I'm glad Pixar is doing this. But on the other hand, I'm like, this sounds like a plot line from a movie from the 90s.
Yeah, it's such... And, like, it's frustrating. Because, like, we've seen how the gay and queer things can get.
Yeah.
You know, like... She-Ra is a show about a classic character from the 80s. Like, she's not just she's not a new made up character. She's an iconic character in American toys, and just in like she's a character in pop culture lexicon.
Yeah. People care about the character.
Yeah,
it's IP that had value.
Exactly, and she's a lesbian, and she wins because she embraces being in love with another girl.
Yeah,
like. That's how she wins in the end. She's like, oh, I'm in love with you too. And then they kiss, and then that saves the day.
Yeah.
Like, it's incredible. It's game-changing.
I mean, that's why it's so amazing how they handled Bo coming out to his dads as being a rebel. Like, in a world in which being queer is normal, you don't have to come out to your parents that you're queer, but they still wanted to have an episode that tackled coming out as a thing, as a concept. And so they're like, oh, we'll have it be about him coming out politically, basically.
Yeah.
And it's brilliant because it keeps it from being like being gay is weird or special, and it can just be part of the standard world. Instead, it's going to be about like, his ability to have freedom from his parents. I mean, because that's, the other thing I was just getting on about the whole generational stuff too, is just like, this is a lot about young people developing independence, coming into leadership in a form of government, and, changing the rules of what people can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you both for joining me. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to make sure we do before we go?
I mean, I just really, really loved Catra this season. Like, just going to hammer that home again. I thought it was really beautiful to see her given so much complexity. I think we didn't talk about Milog. I will say, I think that it was great the way they gave Catra a friend who can bond just with her and be kind of her therapist, and help her sort out her emotions, and that they acknowledged that you don't have that kind of abusive childhood and then turn everything off, that there's a lot that you have to work on and unpack.
Yeah,
and she deserves a magical cat.
Sorry?
And she deserves to have a magical cat.
She does. But I love when Catra says that, like, when she's like, oh, sorry, I'm still being mean, I'm working on it.
Yeah.
And, like, that's such an important thing to show. Like you were saying, like, it's not just something that you can just flip on and off. Like, you have to talk to someone about your feelings. You have to apologize. You have to learn. You have to grow. You have to do hard things. And, yeah, Catra, like... I know a lot of people were like worried about a Catra redemption arc because she's done so much.
Yeah.
But they did such a good job of having it like spaced out, and she was struggling, and she would take steps forward, then take some steps back.
Mm-hmm.
And how she couldn't do it alone. She needed a therapy cat, and she needed friendship from like Bo and Glimmer, and she needed love from Adora and for Adora. A great
and I thought her redemption arc was really realistic, both because, as you mentioned, like, it took a long time, but also it's like, this is the first time she's really had to deal with the consequences of her actions. Like, everything before, I think, was kind of theoretical and kind of like, oh, whatever, like, yeah, we're burning down the planet, but, like, it didn't really mean anything. And then seeing what happens when your home is invaded by Horde Prime, and seeing like, oh wait, it's for real now. It's not just, I mean, it's like, you know, when you grow up in an abusive environment, a lot of things are normalized to you.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
Right, exactly.
then sometimes you see a much worse thing and it puts everything in perspective. And I feel like, you know, so much of what she goes through and how she acts in the first 4 seasons are about what's been normalized to her as somebody who grew up within the Horde. But then seeing Horde Prime, seeing, oh wait, this is fundamentally a quest to just erase everybody's individuality, I think that's a real moment of revelation for her that then forces her to be like, wait, maybe all of this is bad and I don't have to be this person I don't want to be.
Yeah. I mean, she just didn't have options. Like the fact that Adora was given the opportunity to leave the Horde and people embraced her trying to make that change. I mean, there was definitely resistance. Like, you know, I remember at the very beginning, like they're like, oh, she's a Horde soldier because of her costume, but she was able to get past that. You know, like because she had the special princess ability, it might have been different for, you know, other people to try to like leave that abusive situation and position themselves in a different space.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for joining me. I am really happy to be able to talk about Shira with you. And this has been such a lovely show. And, you know, I literally just finished watching the finale today. So the likelihood that I have like 50 other ideas that come to mind in between watching this and actually getting the episode up is entirely possible. So listeners, I would encourage you to contact us and share your thoughts as well. And I would say to my guests, where can our listeners find your work online? How about you, May?
Well, so like you said at the beginning, I have a ton of writing on like out.com, them.us, autostraddle.com. And I'm still like, I'm consulting on a lot of things. I just finished actually consulting on a lot of projects. Some of the books I consulted on recently that are out now, Cosmo Knights by Hannah Templer is amazing.
I've heard good things.
Yeah, it's great. The Deep and Dark Blue, Stage Dreams by Melanie Gilman. I think especially Cosmo Knights. If you like She-Ra, you're going to love Cosmo Knights. It's lesbian space knights. It's amazing.
Well, sorry, there's a new Melanie Gilman book out?
Stage Dreams. Yeah, it came out last year. It's extremely good. It's a lesbian Western.
Oh, shoot. That's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's
I'm a big fan,
beautiful book.
So there we go. Thank you.
And then I'm at Mayrude on Twitter and Instagram, Meyrude, and Mayrude.com. If you want to hire me to consult on your trans characters in your books or video games or whatever, Mayrude.com.
Awesome. Thank you. And Lux, where can folks find your work online?
Yeah. Well, I wrote a book, Faking It, The Lies Women Tell About Sex and the Truth They Reveal, that is available at bookstores everywhere. And I'm taking a little bit of a break from writing because freelance writing is a little more difficult during this time that we are in. But I'm always on Twitter, and my Twitter handle is at Lux Alptraum, LuxAlptraum.
And I am on Twitter a little too much at ELANA_Brooklyn. That's Ilana_Brooklyn. And I have some more awesome interviews coming up with comics creators and conversations around the shows that we love that are comics adjacent. And as we like to say, and of course, graphicpolicy.com is where we're based out of our home base for comics news and reviews. And as we like to say, keep it geeky.
Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games, you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.